but back to the NBA and back to Masai Ujiri. The reason why this is interesting to me is, did you make the hire too soon, Josh Kroenke?
No. And here's why, Raj. I don't think that any president, governor, decision maker for any franchise really wants to take steps back, especially when that would be all the way back to the 2012, 2013 era. You want to take steps forward. And it does sound like Josh Kroenke's in a space where he wants to be more hands-on and be part of really a three-headed monster, if you will, as a decision maker with 10 Benzers, I like to call him, instead of Ben Tenzer, and then John Wallace and Josh Kroenke. And you got to think Masai Ujiri, who's now 54 years old, had some success here with the organization, had some mixed results, some really good results, and then recently not as well received up in Toronto with the ownership change likely looming. But Masai Ujiri is a guy that was probably very much in charge when he was here in Denver. And that might not be something that Josh Kroenke really sees going forward, is another very strong-minded, strong-willed leader in that position, and more let's work together and find the best possible scenario this very important time for Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets roster moving forward.
I agree. I do believe that ownership is going to be a little bit more heavy-handed in actual decisions that are made. However, it's not a step back looking at Masai. Like, if you still had that job opening right now and you hadn't made the hires, Masai Ujiri would be brought in for an interview today. Yeah, I think you would be dumb not to bring him in. I know it's 12 years removed from winning that executive of the year, and bringing Andre Iguodala in that season. Again, it's a very successful team. You do go out in 6 games to Golden State in the first round, unfortunately. Was it Golden State or was that OK? Who was? I think it was Golden State. Golden State in 6 games that year. But he's only 6 seasons away. 6 seasons removed from turning the Toronto Raptors into a championship team. He had to make big splashes. He took big swings there, right? You move on from DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, first-round pick. You bring in an expiring contract on Kawhi Leonard, and you end up hitting a home run on it. So if you are in the window of championship or bust, which you are, right, with a Nikola Jokic going into his 30s, you're in championship or bust. Don't you want a guy who's going to swing for the fences? That's the reason why I think if they had not made the hires earlier on in the week, I think this would have been without a doubt the lead story nationally is, will Masai Ujiri return to where he broke into the NBA here in Denver?
Quite possibly. The decision maker on this is going to be Josh Kroenke. How old was Josh Kroenke when Masai Ujiri was last here in the Denver Nuggets organization? So in his 30s, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be right? I don't know that you can have the hierarchical ebbs and flows in place if you bring back somebody here that was very firmly in charge for 12 years ago, and then was very firmly in charge in Toronto. And if there's anything that Josh Kroenke and the Nuggets have learned over the course of the last several years, post NBA championship and the Michael Malone, Calvin Booth, lack of synergy, is that you don't want to have anybody come in here and strong arm this thing.
Well, you don't want to have anyone come in strong arm, but I also believe that having this 2-headed monster as like co-GMs that both report, and essentially when we heard the not only the press conference, but when Mr. Kroenke came on with PhD just a few moments after that, talking about how both guys are going to share those duties. It's not just like one dude is only player personnel and the other one is only basketball operations. Like, they're kind of mixing and matching everything there. You have more voices. You don't want miscommunication, but what you also don't want at a fan base is a couple of guys who aren't going to challenge. You don't want yes men.
Yeah, the fear for Nuggets fans should be that the Ben Tenzer, John Wallace, and Josh Kroenke brain trust will be too much groupthink. What the optimist in me would say is that Josh Kroenke has interpersonal experience working with Ben Tenzer and John Wallace. Therefore, he has a very good idea of what he wants organizationally and as the decisions start to become more pressure based and you get close to making significant roster decisions, because those are coming, Raj. Significant roster decisions are coming. I'm not saying the next week, I'm not saying necessarily in the next 3 months, but the next 2-3 years, this franchise is going to be reshaped, reformed, because inevitably it has to be. Because you're not going to continue forward with the core four, say, in the 2028 season, right? So these are massive decisions that are going to have to be made. And I think that Josh Kroenke doesn't want it to be one human being in the building that is really strong-armed. And I don't even think that's Josh Kroenke. I think a lot of people would hear this conversation we're having right now and say Josh Kroenke organizationally wants to be the king of the castle, and then he just hired two pages that can just be sitting there with their nice flipped up hair and say, yes, that's a great idea, King Kroenke. I don't think that's the case. I think that Josh Kroenke wants intelligent people around him that he's been around that can tell him, hey, that's a bad decision. Hey, I actually think it's a good decision. Well, let's talk about it. Let's hash it out. And there are three guys that have a very significant voice. And I think that Josh Kroenke and his legacy as somebody that's going to be in charge of this franchise moving forward and making big decisions, he knows that he has to get this right. And I believe he's going to get it right.
So there are no regrets as you wake up this morning that the GM position has already been filled when a guy like Masai comes available. No regrets.
Not for me.
All right.
Not for me. I like new blood, man. I mean, it's a little like at the end of the day, Masai Ujiri, he's not a 75-year-old general manager, but he's been doing this job for a really long time, which at points is a good thing. But you also get stuck in your ways. You get stubborn. I've been around coaches in the college football industry that are very stubborn. And they're like, back in 2014, we did it this way. Therefore, we have to do it this way going forward. No, that's not the case, because the game evolves. Analytics evolve. How you acquire talent evolves. And I think that that's something that Josh Kroenke, by getting Ben Tenzer, younger guy, and retaining Ben Tenzer and promoting him, and then bringing John Wallace back in from the fold, from the Tim Connolly tree, this is ultimately going to be a good thing for what's the next right step for this franchise to move into 2026 and beyond.